Have you ever noticed how your brain creates these strict, like, geographical boundaries for the people in your life?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very common chord
Right. Like, think about it. If you see your dentist in their office and they're holding a drill, your brain immediately knows exactly who they are.
because the context matches the memory.
Exactly. But if you see that exact same dentist wearing, say, sweatpants in the produce aisle of your local grocery store,
Huh.
your brain just goes into this momentary tailspin.
You completely freeze up.
Yeah, you're standing there holding a cantaloupe and feeling this bizarre sense of panic because your internal filing system has completely failed. Like, you know the face, but without the context of that dental chair, the person might as well be an alien.
It's a phenomenon that is rooted really deeply in how human memory operates. We rely so heavily on what's called context-dependent memory.
Okay, context-dependent memory.
Yeah, I mean, our brains are incredibly efficient, but perhaps almost to a fault. They encode a face, along with the environment, the emotional state you were in, and the specific sensory details of the moment you met them.
So they package it all together.
Right. So when you strip all of that context away, that neural pathway simply hits a dead end. The brain doesn't know what to pull up.
Which honestly is the perfect jumping off point for what we are getting into today on this deep dive.
It really is.
We are unpacking a fascinating source text today, an account circulating online titled The Cafe Stranger, A Digital Second Chance. And it's basically a case study that takes this psychological quirk we just talked about and pushes it to an absolute extreme.
It's a wild story.
It really is. It starts with a guy sitting in a cafe. He notices a woman who is in obvious distress. She's dealing with this highly volatile, escalating situation with another person in the cafe.
Someone who's acting aggressively toward her.
Right. And without even thinking, the author jumps in. He pretends to be her boyfriend for about 30 chaotic seconds just to diffuse the threat.
And, we have to emphasize that this wasn't just a casual intervention. The account makes it very clear that the adrenaline was surging.
Oh, yeah, he was terrified.
He was internally preparing for an actual physical altercation. I mean, he actively stepped between her and a potential threat.
Which is incredibly brave. And after the threat is neutralized, the adrenaline crashes, they separate in all the confusion. He walks away and he realizes he didn't even get her name.
A completely anonymous encounter.
Exactly. It is the ultimate compartmentalized memory, high stress, high stakes, completely isolated to that specific cafe on that specific day.
The brain files that away under survival events.
Yes. And he eventually posts about this wild encounter on a popular internet forum just to, vent about how surreal the whole thing was.
As people do nowadays.
Right. But our focus today isn't actually on that first encounter. It is on the update to that post. It's about what happens when the digital world crashes violently back into physical reality.
Because on the surface, I mean, you could easily mistake this for a standard romantic comedy setup.
Boy saves girl, boy loses girl.
Boy finds girl again, exactly. But the psychological undercurrents here are just far more complex than a meet cute.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a real-time case study in cognitive dissonance, parasocial validation, and, well, the strange ways we use the internet to buffer our own vulnerabilities.
So let's look at that reunion, the inciting incident of the update. Months go by. The guy is walking through a completely mundane, fluorescent lit community center.
He's just going about his day.
Right. And who does he see standing by a bulletin board? The nameless woman from the cafe.
What are the odds, right?
I know. And he actually mentions in the text that his brain just stalled out for a second. He writes that he wasn't expecting it at all, and it took a full moment to even process what he was looking at.
Well, going back to our earlier discussion on memory, what's fascinating here is that he experienced a profound cognitive mismatch.
A mismatch between the face and the place.
Precisely. When you experience a high-stress event with someone, your amygdala, which is the brain's emotional processing center, tags that person's face with a survival marker.
Okay, so it highlights them in red, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
The memory's encoded with cortisol and adrenaline. So when he suddenly sees her in a quiet, boring community center, the brain just doesn't know which physiological response to deploy.
It's like when the universe glitches and spawns the same obscure character twice in a video game.
That's a fun way to look at it.
Or it's like trying to open a massive, complex, high-resolution video file using a basic text editor on your computer.
Oh, the software just crashes.
Exactly. The text editor can't read the survival data, so your brain just freezes up and gives you an error message.
That is a highly accurate analogy. The context has shifted so dramatically that the brain essentially stalls out trying to reconcile those two realities.
The survival file versus the community center file.
Right. The individual from the high-stakes survival file is suddenly standing right there in the low-stakes community center file.
And I just want you to imagine the awkwardness of that moment. It must be suffocating. They both realize who the other person is.
The shared acknowledgement of, wow, this is actually happening again.
Yeah, you're standing there looking at someone you last saw while you were bracing to throw a punch to protect them. And now, like, someone is asking over the intercom about a lost set of car keys.
The mundane crashing into the traumatic.
But they actually manage to push through that initial friction. They start talking, and the guy notes in the text how relieving it was to just have a grounded, normal conversation. The chaos was just gone.
And that transition from a shared trauma response to baseline social interaction is crucial here.
Because they're finally acting like normal people.
Exactly. They're establishing a normative baseline. They're moving from being, characters in a chaotic incident to just being two regular people making small talk.
Which sounds incredibly healthy. I mean, right up until the moment he decides to just detonate that newly established normalcy.
This is where the story takes a very sharp turn.
Okay, let's unpack this, because they are having this nice chat, and out of nowhere, he decides to tell her about the internet post he wrote regarding their first encounter.
He brings the internet into the room.
And he doesn't just mention it in passing either. He actually pulls out his phone and shows her the viral post.
He pulls back the curtain entirely. He introduces a third party to their private interaction.
The thousands of strangers on the internet.
Yes.
And I really struggle to understand the logic behind this move. I mean, let's look at it from her side for a second.
It's a huge risk.
It's massively risky. You had this terrifying, chaotic moment with a stranger. You run into him again months later. You are finally relaxing and seeing him as a normal guy. And then he whips out his phone to reveal that your private, stressful experience has been packaged and broadcast to the internet.
It turns life into content.
Exactly. He basically commodified a highly vulnerable moment in her life for internet points. To be honest, I would be completely mortified, if not outright angry.
And your reaction is entirely justified. In fact, the account notes that her immediate response was friction.
She was mad.
She looked annoyed at first. And why wouldn't she be? We are talking about the visceral discomfort of being perceived without consent.
Nobody wants that.
In our current digital landscape, we all have this underlying fear of unknowingly becoming the main character of the internet on any given day.
Oh, the main character energy, but the bad kinds.
Right. Discovering that you were unknowingly the subject of a viral story triggers an immediate defensive response. It violates your agency over your own life's narrative.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be a piece of involuntary content. But, and here's the pivot that completely threw me, the annoyance is there, but then it fades.
It dissipates almost entirely.
Yeah, he watches her scroll, and she actually starts smiling as she reads through the comments section of the post. The strangers on the internet somehow diffuse her anger.
What's fascinating here is that this is where we see the mechanics of memory reconsolidation at play, and it's heavily influenced by communal validation.
Okay, wait, memory reconsolidation. Let's break that down for a second. How does reading a comment section on a phone change a physical memory?
Well, human memory isn't like a video recording that you just play back perfectly every time.
Right.
Every time you recall a memory, your brain physically pulls it apart and rebuilds it. It becomes malleable.
So it's vulnerable to change every time you think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
During that rebuilding process, the memory can be altered by new information or new emotional states. Initially, her memory of the cafe is stressful. It's chaotic.
It's a negative memory.
But as she reads the comments, she is bombarded with a new framework. Thousands of strangers are validating the event. They are likely framing his actions as heroic or romantic, and framing her as the survivor of a dramatic narrative.
So the crowd is effectively providing a new set of blueprints for her to rebuild that memory.
Precisely. The communal validation takes a messy, chaotic, potentially traumatic reality and polishes it into an entertaining story. By reading the comments, she is allowed to consume her own life as entertainment. The audience's positive reaction retroactively smooths out the rough edges of her own lived experience.
I mean, that is fascinating, but also deeply unsettling. Are we really that pliable?
We are incredibly socially driven creatures.
But we are basically outsourcing our emotional processing to an algorithm and a crowd of anonymous users. Because the crowd decides it's a cute story, she gives herself permission to feel okay about it.
It speaks to our deep-seated evolutionary need for social consensus. If the tribe tells you that an event was positive, your brain works very hard to align your personal feelings with the tribe's consensus.
And it clearly works in his favor here. I mean, the tension breaks, they finish their conversation, and before they part ways, he takes a swing and asks for her phone number.
A very normal next step.
Right, and she gives it to him. But here's where it gets really interesting, because this is where the story introduces a massive psychological paradox.
The contrast in his behavior.
Yeah. He admits in his post that asking for her number felt like a vastly bigger, more terrifying step than stepping into the violent altercation at the cafe.
This raises an important question, doesn't it? It highlights the profound difference between reactive bravery and proactive vulnerability.
They seem like the same thing, but they aren't.
Not at all. They occupy completely different neural pathways.
Let's explore that, because on paper, it sounds absurd. How can asking for 10 digits of a phone number feel heavier than stepping between a vulnerable stranger and a hostile threat?
It seems counterintuitive.
Totally. One involves potential physical injury, a fistfight, and the other involves a polite conversation in a well-lit room.
Well, in the cafe, the threat was immediate.
Mm-hmm.
When you perceive an immediate physical threat, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for complex planning, social calculation, and self-doubt, essentially shuts down.
It just goes offline.
Completely offline.
Yeah.
Your amygdala hijacks your nervous system, flooding you with adrenaline to facilitate a fight, flight, or freeze response.
So he didn't even have time to think.
He didn't have time to deliberate, no. His body just moved to neutralize the threat. It was an instinctual performance.
So the bravery in the cafe was basically biological autopilot.
Yes, exactly. But asking for a phone number, and more specifically the prospect of asking for a date, is entirely different. There is no immediate physical threat to trigger the amygdala.
There's no adrenaline to save you.
Right. Instead, the prefrontal cortex is fully active. You are standing there, stripped of any heroic context, simply offering yourself up for social evaluation.
Oh, man.
And neuroimaging actually shows that the brain processes social rejection in the exact same areas that it processes physical pain.
Wait, really? So the brain literally cannot tell the difference between the physical danger of getting punched in the cafe and the social danger of her saying no to a coffee date?
In terms of the pain matrix in the brain, a social rejection is a physical blow. Proactive vulnerability requires you to consciously decide to walk into that potential pain without the protective buffer of adrenaline.
It's like successfully defusing a bomb, but then being too nervous to ask the bomb squad for a high five.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
One is an instantaneous reaction. The other is deliberate, terrifying exposure. And we see this paralysis play out in the very next step of the story.
The ultimate anticlimax.
Yes. Because despite getting her number, despite the fact that she smiled at the Reddit post, he admits an ultimate failure. He couldn't bring himself to ask her out on an actual date while they were standing there.
He hits a wall of vulnerability that he simply cannot scale in person.
He tries to rationalize it in the post, too. He notes that the whole situation still felt, quote, unreal, and he expresses a specific fear. He says he didn't want to mess it up again.
Which is very telling phrasing.
Yeah, but what does he mean by messing it up? He didn't mess up the cafe incident. He successfully diffused it. He didn't mess up the community center chat. He got her number. So what is he afraid of messing up?
When he says he fears messing it up again, he is likely referring to the fear of collapsing the narrative.
The narrative they built with the internet.
Exactly. Look at what they have built up to this point. The serendipity of the reunion, combined with the viral internet post, has elevated their dynamic to something almost cinematic.
It's like a movie script.
It feels unreal to him because it resembles fiction more than reality.
It's a magic trick.
Precisely. And asking for a formal date is the moment you force the magic trick back into the mundane logistics of reality.
Oh, I see.
Because asking for a phone number is a request for a passive connection. You can have a number in your phone and never call it.
True.
But asking for a date is a demand for active engagement. If he asks her on a date and she says no, or if they go on the date and they just don't have any chemistry, the cinematic story is ruined, the magic is dead.
So the potential for a perfect story is somehow safer than the reality of a flawed relationship.
Exactly.
That makes so much sense. He is terrified of bursting the bubble. Which leads us to the final, somewhat desperate maneuver he makes.
A digital leap of faith.
Yes. He can't ask her out in person. His vocal cords have totally failed him. So what does he do? He creates a digital detour. He tells her the name of the internet forum where he posted the story and suggests she look it up.
He offloads the vulnerability from the physical world to the digital world.
Yes. And the story we are discussing today, this entire update, concludes with a direct message to her embedded in the text.
A message for an audience of one.
Right. The final sentence reads, quote, "So, if by any chance you are reading this, would you go on a date with me?" End quote. He uses the internet as his proxy.
It's an incredible shift in medium.
He couldn't say the words to her face, so he typed them out, threw them into the void of the subreddit, and just crossed his fingers that she would wander in and find them.
This is a textbook example of utilizing asynchronous communication as an emotional safety net.
But is it really safer? I mean, think about it. If she reads the post and decides not to respond, he still gets rejected. The outcome is exactly the same.
The outcome might be the same, but the biofeedback is entirely different.
What do you mean by biofeedback?
Well, if he asks her in person and she hesitates, or her facial expression drops, or she flat out says no, he has to absorb that rejection synchronously.
In real time.
In real time. He has to stand there, process the social pain, manage his own facial expressions, and navigate an incredibly awkward goodbye.
It's an immediate, inescapable sting.
But by burying the question at the bottom of an internet post, he manipulates the timeline of vulnerability.
Oh, that's clever.
He creates what we might call a Schrodinger's date.
Schrodinger's date. I love that.
Once he hits publish on that post, the request is out in the universe. But until she creates an account, navigates to the specific forum, reads the post, and decides to reply, she has neither accepted nor rejected him.
He traps the relationship in a state of permanent potential.
Exactly.
It is honestly a fascinating blend of cowardice and wild romantic optimism.
It really is both.
It's cowardly because, let's face it, he avoided the physical discomfort of looking her in the eye and risking a real-time no. But it is undeniably optimistic because he is putting his fate into the hands of internet architecture.
He's relying on a lot of variables.
He is trusting her memory of a website name, her motivation to search for it, and the algorithms of the forum to deliver the question he couldn't speak.
He is treating the digital world as an extension of his own nervous system.
Wow, an extension of his nervous system.
Think about the progression. He took a high-stakes, purely physical encounter, digitized it to process the trauma, used that digitization to bond with her in the physical world, and then immediately retreated back into the digital realm for the final moment of emotional exposure.
The boundaries between the physical and the digital have completely dissolved for him.
They don't exist anymore.
When you trace the arc of this entire sequence of events, it is staggering. I mean, it begins with a 30-second lie in a cafe to survive a threat.
A pure survival instinct.
Then it transforms into a serendipitous, context-breaking collision in a community center. It navigates the risky reveal of a viral post, relying on the psychology of crowds to rewrite a stressful memory.
Memory reconsolidation in action.
Yes. And then it exposes the massive gulf between instinctual bravery and the paralyzing fear of social rejection. And it finally culminates in a digital plea for a first date, waiting asynchronously in the ether.
It really serves as a meticulously documented record of how modern human beings use digital spaces not just to communicate, but to insulate themselves from the raw friction of human connection.
And that is the central thought I want you to carry with you as we wrap up this deep dive. Consider the invisible digital trails you are leaving right now.
They are everywhere.
The casual comments, the stories you post, the digital artifacts of your daily life. We tend to view our physical reality and our digital footprint as two separate ledgers.
But they aren't.
No, they're constantly bleeding into one another. How often do you outsource your own difficult conversations, your own moments of necessary vulnerability to the safety of a screen?
It's a question we all have to grapple with. And beyond just the method of communication, this story leaves us with a lingering question about the nature of observation itself.
What do you mean?
Well, if a relationship's very foundation is built upon an audience-observed internet story, if the initial comfort was generated not just by the two people involved, but by the validation of thousands of anonymous readers, does the presence of that invisible digital audience fundamentally alter the dynamic?
Oh, man. Because if she logs on, finds that post, and replies to that final line saying yes to a date, who is she really saying yes to?
Exactly. Is she agreeing to date the nervous guy from the community center?
Or is she agreeing to play the co-star in a viral internet story? At what point do you stop living your life and start performing the sequel for an audience that isn't even in the room?
The line gets very blurry.
It forces you to wonder if any of us are truly writing our scripts alone anymore.